Innovators, long, the basically short answer to what we are is we are the next generation of people who are getting involved with the amazing things that Technion University is doing, both in Israel, in the US, in China, and all over the world. And, who better to talk about some of the amazing things that Technion alumnus are doing, other than Eliad Peretz, who I could read through his 10-page bio, but it actually wouldn't be up to date because he recently got a promotion, even more recently than this bio was written last week. But some of his achievements working for NASA are, 2020 Early Career Achievement Medal, the Goddard Honor Award in 2019, NASA's Early Career Excellence Award in 2018, just to name a few. And, it's a great honor and privilege for us to bring him here to speak to us at 5:30 p.m., in the middle of a pandemic. So I will stop there. The one thing I'd ask from everyone, I'd love for people to think about as they're listening to Eliad, to think of a question or two. We want to make this interactive when he's finished. He wants to make this interactive. So even if you're not comfortable asking him directly, you could put it in the chat to me. I'll ask it. But Eliad, the floor is yours, and thank you again.
Eliad, I think you might be on mute.
Oh, there we go. Yes, you're correct. Well, hi, everyone. It's good to see you all. I'm very happy to be here with you this evening. I see many familiar faces, so that's great. Hi, Caitlin. It's good to see you. I guess just before I even begin, I don't want this to be a presentation mode kind of thing. So I'm really imagining you guys talking as I kind of tell you about my story. You'll also notice that unlike other events where I focus on all the bells and whistles, like showing cool pictures and talking about what I've been doing for the last few years or a decade of my life, this is more of a personal kind of my journey. There were two options before I came to this meeting where I asked the team whether they wanted to hear more about my work or more about my personal story. So I'll take you through some pictures and just tell you about my failures, most of them at least, and how I came to do what I do. But then I'll also show you some cool pictures and some things I do, so just so you can enjoy it. So I'll begin. Let me just share my screen for 1 second. Let's see. Just make sure that you actually see the enlarged screen. So, oh, I don't think you see the right screen. 1 second. Let me do this again. Screen 2. And can you see it now? Please speak so I know that you're there. Yes, great. Okay, so thank you all for joining us today. I'm happy to be here to talk in front of you. As you all know, my name is Eliad Peretz, and I act, well, no longer, as of yesterday. I have a new job, but as of yesterday, I was a lead researcher for new space missions at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. I'm going to talk about two things today. One of them is my journey, so how I got to where I am. And then in the second one, I'll tell you more about how I found myself at the heart of the National Academy of Sciences, chasing after or trying to find Earth-like planets around sun-like stars in the universe. How I found myself working on one of the largest telescopes, or not one of, the largest telescope ever to be launched by humans, the JWST, right at Goddard, where I work at. And how I found myself also involved in the, I guess, trying to figure out what's the expansion rate of the universe. And it's kind of jumping between different things, but for me, my journey began in places that you'll see in a second. And just being where I am today took a lot of time and a lot of failure. So as I go through, you see the repeating motive of fail, fail, fail before I get to anywhere. So, oops. There we go. Okay, so this is where my life story begins. As you can see, this is going to be a very open and personal kind of, I want to tell my story. You're all about my age. I'm not into showing, look at how shiny and exciting this thing is. I'm more into actually like sharing with you my journey and then show you some shiny things. So I was born in Afula, which is a S-hole in the middle of nowhere. Excuse me for the description. And the house in the building you see here had an earthquake in 1981, just a year before my birth. And the entire building is cracked at the center where you see those pink pillars that are reinforcement after that happened. The apartment that you see marked in red is a single room apartment where me and at that time 4 and my brothers and sister that then became 6 of my brothers and sister all lived together. My school at that time was an ultra-Orthodox school located 20 minutes away from that center where we did not study math, we did not study English, and in general, mainly studied Bible, which meant for me that the prospect of me ever ending in any field or category that is science related was nearly non-existent. Let's put it that way. The one thing I did have was a very, I would say, well, my family was super supportive, and I always had the opportunity to learn from hardworking people. So the image you see here is an olive field owned by my family back then, not by my parents, by my grandfather, with 2 fields. One of them is a 25 by 25 tree field, so 625 trees. And the other one is a 50 by 75 field. And the reason I show you this is to share with you that since I was 5 and I started my, I guess, Kita Aleph, or what you call first grade, at the age of 5, which is 1 year earlier than most people, I really did not like ultra-Orthodox schools. So I decided to go with my grandfather to work in the olive on our family properties, and I spent probably 7 to 8 hours a day clearing the bushes at the bottom of those trees. Now, just imagine yourself as a small kid, like going through each one of those things, probably working on every tree about 3 to 6 hours, just understanding that this is what needs to be done for us to be in a place where we can sell the olives, and next year we'll have enough harvest. And you would learn about determination, trust me. 625, multiply that, understand how much time in school you're going to miss. And that was one of my defining activities as a young, well, as a really small boy. I just loved it. I loved riding the tractor with my grandfather and go to the field and not go with a kippah to school. And for me, it was one way of starting forging my personality, understanding that everything comes down to the details and how much time you put into something and not giving up, even if the challenge is really big. And that was, I guess, one of the first steps I took as I kind of growing up, at least one of the things I took from my family. As I reach, I think, the 5th grade, my father decided to, well, my father had to leave because after the Second Lebanon War, which he was a part of, the entire armored corps moved to the Negev in Israel, like their entire operation, just because of reassessment. And my father had to move to Eilat. And in Eilat, I lived in this house that you see here. This one had 2 rooms with 6 kids, so an improvement, like a 3-to-1. And the small window that you see there is my window. I used to throw a rope outside of it and just jump outside and play whenever I wanted to. But again, this should give you the idea of what my next school was, which was not an ultra-Orthodox, but was a semi-ultra-Orthodox school that did teach math and English. So that was a first step in a direction that kind of make me understand that I can do other things. But very, very early in my career, as I went to this school, I understood 2 things, and I'm talking with you 5th grade about. I knew that I was interested in space, and I knew that I was interested in math. And I kid you not, I spent probably 12 hours a day solving math equations and just trigonometry, like 5th grade, trying to learn anything I could about physics and just kind of do everything that is interesting to me at that point, just coming out of ultra-Orthodox school. I felt like I needed to do what I wanted to do. Unluckily for me, Eilat have other things to offer, like a beautiful beach. And I found myself, again, gravitating out of school and just chasing my passion. So just diving with dolphins or around corals. And Eilat for me was a place where I learned to follow my passion. So leave aside the cost of what it means, where you need to go, what you need to do, but just follow your passion, even though you're not sure that things are going to get well. So just enjoy the moment and do what you love. And that's the second lesson I took from this city, less for my family, is like, as long as you love what you do and you're really passionate about it, like things would be good. Like, so I didn't know that at the time, but that what I took, at least from my experience in Eilat for a few years. The one thing that did happen is that I dropped out of school because I missed so many classes. And I found myself somewhere at the age of 15 understanding that this can no longer go that way. And then I joined an external education system and just sat myself down, and within 12 months, finished my entire Teudat Bagrut, which is the equivalent of your final exams here after high school. So I actually managed, kid you not, within 12 months, finished like AP in physics, AP in math, AP in English, like everything perfect scores. Coming out of that, and at that point in life, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, which led me to my military service, where I started by joining the Israeli Air Force Academy, so pilot training for 2 years, and then straight into officer school after that. Both of those were the grandest failures of my life. From flight school, I dropped out because I was back then 18, full of testosterone, and found myself in a fight, which no need to expand about over here, but this is where I learned that if I don't control my actions, not just my temper in general, I would pay with my dreams for that. So I really wanted to become a fighter pilot at that time. And that was my first lesson. And my second lesson at officer schools was you need to stay in focus. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen. So up until here, like great aspirations and passion, but at the same time, I was not in a place where I could, how would I put it in a nice way, to be a real grown-up, to be in a mental place that allows me and accommodates long-term thinking. And I'm coming out of my military service better understanding what are the things I need to be if I need to succeed. So again, additional failures kind of stack, and at some point, it starts hitting you, your personality at least. And then I'm trying for the first time to submit my application to the Technion, and what do you know? They don't accept me. With a recommendation to go to the pre-academic school for a year so I could position myself better to be accepted. And I do spend a year of my life there, just going again through math, physics, everything you can think of. And in all honesty, it's not just math and physics, it's actually the other things that I needed to work on, which is like language skills and things like that. So things that you did not acquire in ultra-Orthodox school. And then after my military service, after a year at the pre-academic program, which you really guys need to learn more about, it's probably the place where the most disadvantaged people get a chance if they manage to pull it off. And probably the most under budget place you'll see in the entire Technion, but that's a side note. And then about 2 years later, what do you know? I'm accepted to the Technion, to the aerospace faculty. And this is where I start reaping the benefits of my investment slowly. So I go into the Technion, and as you all know, as a student in Israel, especially if you don't have a family that comes from that have strong means to support you, it means you need to support yourself. And I find myself somewhere in the third year running out on my money, just to be super blunt about this. and nearly drop out of school just because of that. And at that point, I understand it's not good enough to be a good student. You also need to be an entrepreneur to survive. And I opened my first business. And I start trading, kid you not, frozen food with a Technion for the kitchens. So I find myself going at night to the market in Haifa, buying frozen carrots, frozen whatever, and then selling them to the Technion with a premium. And that money managed to both pay for my education, coming out with no debt of school, but also paying for my brother's education at the same time at the Technion. And this is where I understand that entrepreneurship is not something that is unique to business. It's something that is unique for anything you do in life, either to survive or later on when you develop technologies or whatever you do. So somewhere along my, I guess, my bachelorette, so doing my undergraduate degree, I start working on those skills and get to a place where I have a running business on the side of me studying. And as I finished my 4th year, passing that business to my brother because I don't have no longer time to do anything else. And that business exists until today. So I'm kind of happy about that, but pass along to him to enjoy the fruits of it. I, of course, went in a different route. Okay, so coming out of the Technion, well, let me take a step back. At the Technion, I meet my wife, who is an American, born and raised in Silver Spring, Maryland. And we decide that we move to the US. She knows she wants to join a PhD program. I'm not sure what I want to do with my life at that point. I always knew I'm interested in space sciences and in space exploration, but I never thought I'll actually have a chance, but I always pursue that path. So I land on November 2013 in Ithaca, New York. And I kid you not, this is what the visitithaca.com website says at the winter I joined. Keep in mind, I came from a lot, right? Like I did not see snow in my life before this. And if you can read, you can see that we say, that's it, we surrender, winter you win, Key West anyone. So I go into Ithaca, and that winter is much more than just a winter for me. I try to apply to a set of different jobs. No one accept me. I try to apply to the master program at Cornell. They do not accept me. And I experience probably one of the worst years of my life, basically running out of fuel again, of funding, because I don't want to use the funding from the business I had in Israel. So I'm trying to start a new way here. And in the last kind of moment effort, after knowing what I'm trying to do, I'm being accepted to a visiting researcher position with no pay at Cornell University at the Creative Machine Labs to develop algorithms to predict the composition of materials for solar panels for spacecraft. And of course, if you get someone for free, you'll take him, right? As long as you have enough brain to do the job. So I get my first chance, and I spend probably a year in this lab. Kid you not, I barely go home to take a shower. Sometimes I sleep in the lab so I could make it to the next day discussion. And as I go through this process, I start working on my grand vision of what I want my career to look like, who I want to work for. So I know I want to work for NASA. I know I want to work on mission formulation and technology development. And I just, I guess, tune and explore what kind of research fields are an interest to me and are aligned with the agency priorities. And for a year, I work on a proposal for the agency. And this is basically me 90-minute. If you are a soccer, if you like soccer and you watch it, you know we have only 90 minutes in a game. And this is me getting to minute 89, and this is my last option. Otherwise, I'm on a plane back home, like ran out of money, ran out of everything, don't have anything to do. And what do you know, 30 days before I'm on a plane, I get those emails. Email top one on the left is an email from NASA headquarters. And I took out some of the details because not for now. But big picture is, image on the left tells me, we're happy to let you know that NASA just picked you up as a NASA Space Technology Research Fellow, and we're willing to fund your entire graduate school with your program. The second one comes from the National Science Foundation, telling me the exact same thing. And now I find myself in a place where I need to decide, which funding source I want to choose. And then comes the letter of acceptance from Columbia, from Cornell University, from MIT. And I start to understand that the path has changed for me at that point. Now, keep in mind that I'm not a different person. I'm the same person I was this entire journey. It's just takes a lot of forward thinking, determination, and belief that you can actually make this happen, right? And then pursuing it in the lab, making sure you have publications, and just building yourself up as you go into the American ecosystem, which is different than the Israeli ecosystem in some ways. So up until here, this is kind of where my journey starts, and this is where I am today. So on the left top, you see John Mather, Nobel laureate in physics. He's my boss. Like, he's in my, like, one office left of me. We challenge each other every day on like the expansion of the universe, or how to do A or how to do B. On the top right, you see Saul Perlmutter from Berkeley, who is another Nobel laureate who is working with me on a different mission. And then you see the 3 Nobel laureates on the bottom, which I work with almost every week. So I find myself kind of in the heart of this intellectual, I don't want to say ivory tower, it sounds kind of weird, but I guess next to the smartest people you can think of in this field on the planet. And I ask myself, what has changed? Like, what has changed in me that suddenly it's okay that I'm in this place? And the answer is nothing changed. It's just, it takes time, determination, and it's just, you need to wait for things to click. My grandfather used to tell me that being prepared is half of being lucky. So prepared, okay, but then for the other half of luck to wait takes a long time. So up until here, this is kind of my personal story, but now I want to take you into more of the meat of what it is I'm doing today. So I just want to give you a feel of how NASA is structured, just for kind of your general impression. We have an entire aeronautic research division that is focused on the development of aviation components, planes. Every time you think about the FAA or jamming control, or whatever you can have in mind that has to do with civil aviation, that's one of the prerogatives of NASA. We have the Human Exploration and Operation Mission Directorate, which supports the exploration of any body outside of Earth with humans. And I won't go too deep into that, although I can if you want me to. We have the Space Technology Mission Directorate, which is responsible for developing, kid you not, 20, 30, 40 years in advance technologies we know we'll need to use at that time. And then the 4th division is the Science Mission Directorate, who supports 4 fields of exploration. Astrophysics, so studying the universe outside of our solar system. Heliophysics, which supports the exploration of the sun, and you see the Solar Parker probe though. At the bottom left, you see the Earth Science Division with the ISAT-2 spacecraft, which explores the impact of space on our planet and just changes in our planet in general. And then the Planetary Division, who is responsible for studying the inner solar system. So every time you see a Mars rover landing or someone going to Venus or something like that, that's what they do. So just to give you an idea of where I stand somewhere between the Astrophysics Division and the Heliophysics Division. And I'll talk more about what I do in a second. Okay, so I do a lot of things. My hand is all over the place. I have big teams that work for me. At this point, probably above 100 people. I just want to make sure I'm okay. Am I too late on time? Is it too much time?
You're great. Keep going.
Okay. So I work on technology development of nearly anything you can think of. And when I say I work on it, I mean I have a lab where I actually make those things and put them on spacecraft and launch them on a rocket to space. So solar arrays, propulsion system, laser systems, detectors. I have large teams that make them from zero. I lead flight missions. So when we say in the agency flight missions, is anything that was selected to be launched to space. So this is a partial list of the missions that I'm responsible for. With the exception of JWST, which I'm a part of, I'm not leading. I'm responsible for multiple mission concept review boards. So basically thinking about what's the next stage of space exploration and how are we as an agency going to conduct that exploration. And just tying in all of that together to explain why is astrophysics and heliophysics are all tied together. Because when you try to search for other planets around sun-like stars, it's not enough to find those planets. You need to understand the stars that they revolve around. And those kind of connections between the star and the planet and understanding them is crucial for your ability to be able to look at them and see them. So again, another step back, because everything is very official in the agency. We are trying to answer three major questions. The first one is, how does the universe work? And at the bottom right, you can see the statement of what's the actual question we're trying to solve. The second question is, how did we get here? So the evolution of galaxies and other things. But what I'm focused on is this question within the agency: are we alone? So discover and study planets on other stars and explore whether they could harbor life. That's basically my life mission at this point. We have debates about whether this could bring a Nobel, but we can talk about this later. So how are things being done at NASA? Long story short, we plan probably 30 years in advance. So what you're seeing here is a report coming out every cycle. We call this report the decadal survey. So every decade we sit together and try to figure out what's next. So Hubble was conceived or was approved at 1972 and then launched after that. Chandra, Spitzer, JWST, which is our next launch, WFIRST, which is the launch after that. And what do you know? Like this year, the decadal survey is sitting down on what's coming next. So I had the opportunity of sitting on that committee as well and just figure out what are our next steps within the astrophysics division. So how do we answer this question of are we alone? The first question is, are there other planets? The second one is, what are their properties? Like, do they have oxygen? Do they have methane? Like, what do they have inside of them? How do we know? What's important to know? Who knows? And are there any Earth-like planets? So just to give you an idea, up until 1990, kid you not, the whole bunch of smart people sitting at the top of astrophysics did not think there were other planets other than the planets in our solar system. Like that was the prevailing opinion. And as you can see from this figure, something happened in 1989. We discovered a new way to characterize stars and their orbiting planets, and then an explosion. And today we're in a point where we say, well, every star has a planet around it. And we're not that special after all, maybe special in other ways. So why is this so hard? Why is it a problem for us to understand how to find those planets? Let me just jump very fast to this. So as I started saying earlier, it has to do also about the hosting stars of those planets. And there are different types of stars. So the G star that you see here is our sun. But there are M stars, which are dimmer, and there are O stars, which are brighter. And planets who revolve around those stars are going to be different distances or whatever. The second thing you want to keep in mind is the distance of those planets from those stars is going to dictate whether they have life or not, or have the capability of even having life with, I guess, the pre-notion that water is essential for having life within those planets, which is another discussion that we can have. So why is this challenging? Well, the first thing is those stars are super bright. So what you're seeing here, let me just move this for a second. This is an image of Alpha Centauri, probably one of the prime targets for any person who wants to look for other planets. And the first thing you can see from here is that this star is so bright that you don't have a chance to see a planet around it. Just the brightness of the star is going to take you down. And then the second thing you need to keep in mind is that those planets are so dim that even if the star was not there, it's not really clear you could have seen it to begin with. So let me just show you how galaxies that are far away looks like in our telescopes. Those are real images. Forget about all those beautiful NASA images of close galaxies. And now imagine us trying to play Tetris with pixels in a camera. And those are not even planets and stars. Those are galaxies. So the challenge is becoming too serious for us at that point, because we are not able to discern the planet from the star. and there isn't enough flux coming, even if you wanted to. So big picture, where do we stand today? No one can see those planets in reflected light. There's no chance. So next missions would have to figure out how to do that. But everyone say there is no chance. But then came this picture from Beta Pictorius from a ground-based telescope and showed us that there is a planet in the habitable zone around that star, and those 9 bright pixels you see there are the only confirmation we have for that. And the reason we were able to pull this off is because this planet was dim enough, and because that star was dim enough, and that planet was bright enough, meaning this is a lava planet, like it's burning, and that's the only reason you can see it. So as we kind of look into the future, we're trying to develop technologies that address 2 items. One of them is our ability to suppress that starlight, and the other one is our ability to read the signals coming in from those planets. And that's mainly what I'm focused on. So I'm going to stop here, and let's make this more of a conversation, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eliad. That was great.
Sure.
And with the first question, we have Sam Rubenstein.
Thanks, Eliad. That was a fascinating presentation. So I was just curious to know, what are your thoughts on the private sector's increased involvement in the space industry in the last few years?
Yeah, I think it's a very good step that the agency is taking forward. I really don't think that government agencies are good at optimizing processes and reducing their costs and just making them more efficient. But I do think that government, and when I say government, I mean NASA, are really good at solving new problems. We semi-talked about this earlier, but big picture is, if we already figured out how to launch a rocket out of Earth to space, you don't need NASA anymore. You need someone who can tell you, oh, this cost 5 cents less, and this is 10% stronger metal or whatever, and then just run with that forward and find a way to make it efficient, industry standard, right? On the other hand, there are things that industry either cannot do or would not do because it's not driven by
I can
profit.
go whenever you're ready.
So I'm not sure if it answers your question, but I think it's a good step forward. On the other hand, there is kind of this assumption that, oh, now only SpaceX and ULA do launches. Well, let me kind of dial it back. We still, within the agency, provide more than 50% of our launches opportunities from within NASA. So industry still have a way to come forward before we can actually rely on them. I think SpaceX was only approved for human spaceflight like only a few months ago, right? For the first time. So I would love to see more involvement from the industry or the private sector. I actually support multiple technology development through the SBIR program and the STTR program. So if any of you are like in space business and you're looking for investment from government to develop new technologies, please do talk to me. I think we have a budget of somewhere around $300 million a year. I'm managing a part of it. So we do support that. We encourage that even. Yeah.
Great. I know that Michael had a question. Michael, do you still want to ask your question?
I have a different question. Before
Sure.
we go out to the fun article, I'll let Jerry ask this. How do you said you look at technology that 40 years ahead. I find that mind-boggling. I mean, now in the airspace industry, many times they look 15, 20 years out. It takes that long to bring technology into the airplane and to get it approved. How does it work that you can look at 40 years? Is it just because it takes so long, but the development cycles just seem incredible?
Yeah, so the first thing we do at the agency is we understand the problem we're trying to solve. So let me be very concrete. Let's say you want to observe Earth-like planets around sun-like stars in the universe. And you understand that your first challenge is to suppress starlight. So leave aside the technology you choose to deal with, you can start putting a requirement on what is the appropriate suppression rate that you're interested in. So in our case, 10 to the minus 10 or 10 billion times, you need to dim that star by a factor of 10 billion. That's a number we know of. So now you start asking yourself realistically, which technology paths could show a promise in doing that? And we've identified 2 so far. So star shades and coronagraphs. And now we know that the hubs for those industries sit in places X, Y, and Z. So we began probably 5 years ago a program that supports the development of demonstrators. And then we learn about the theoretical limitations and so forth. We look at our budget profile and we say this needs to be ready for launch at, let's say, 2049, right? That's kind of I guess that's the aim for one of those telescopes. So that's 30 years in advance. And then you break down your requirement. I need these detectors, these mirrors, this whatever. And then you present it as a requirement. You don't present it as a solution. And then you walk on multiple paths. So we invest money in, I think, 3 different programs that try to answer that problem. And then as we'll get closer to, let's say, 2035, we'll need to make a decision. So the answer is, we know what the needs are. We have multiple paths, and we're just waiting to see which horse is going to take the lead at some point.
Great. And by the way, since we're a small enough group, you could either raise your hand with the raise hand button in participants, or you could just raise your hand in the screen and I will see you. I'll ask the next question. Eliad, from John Mather, who obviously has been someone so impressive that you worked alongside. 2-part question. Number 1, what's the most important thing you think you've learned from him? And part 2 would be, what do you think the most important thing you've brought to him that he learned from you?
That's a good question. I think what I've learned, I guess the most important thing I've learned from him at this point is not to afraid to dream big. If I would tell you about some of the missions like we had in mind, you would not believe people would take us seriously. Like one of the missions was involved with developing a 100-meter size starshade, which is a sunflower-like spacecraft flying 200,000 kilometers from a space ground telescope to suppress the starlight of the system I just told you about. It weighs 20 tons. It needs 5 refueling. And you just look at this kind of, and he tells you, there you go, here are the details. Can you please make a mission out of it? And at one moment you think, am I crazy? Am I doing something? And then you find yourself 3 years into it, actually proving in peer-reviewed processes that this could be pulled off. So that would be the thing I would take from him, is never afraid of dreaming big. Like that, it's a good thing. Just keep in mind that he's the person who conceived the James Webb Space Telescope, probably at I think it was somewhat after I was born, so 1985, I think. And it didn't even launch, right? It's supposed to launch next year. So he started with that big dream 40 years ago, and you see it happening. I guess with respect to what I bring to him, I'm a very interdisciplinary person. You can talk to me optics, you can talk to me economics, you can talk to me management, and different branches of each one of those. And I just find a way to put all of those things together and make them tick in a way that moves your team, in my case, our team, to a place that is bearing fruits. So I think that ability is almost crucial in the agency, where you see a lot of kind of gray engineers, like they're really good at doing something, but that's the only thing that they bring to the table. So just having this kind of spirit, I think, but that's my opinion. We should ask him.
Great, thank you. Who'd like to ask the next question? Let's go to Caitlin.
Hi, Eliad.
Hello.
So there's been several articles that have come out about Chaim Eshed's.
Oh, yeah.
I just, you slightly touched on extraterrestrial life, and I just wanted your opinion about it.
Yeah, so Michael, there goes your I'm joking. Okay, so let's take a big kind of step back. Let's talk about Eshed, and let's talk about like how to approach this. So first thing is, he's a super serious person, right? He won 3 awards from Israel, contribution to the country's security. He led forward the diplomatic front of the space program in Israel. So anything I'm going to say next is not to say that I don't think he did not contribute enough to society. It's just to say that he's a good guy as a whole. Now, I want to separate two things. There is the question of whether there is life in the universe, right? We all want to know, but the real answer is we don't know, right? We don't even know if there are planets that could support life, which is the goal of our division. Try to figure out if there are places who can even accommodate that. So that's one. But if you read through his interview, he went a few steps forward and said like, oh, there is a base on Mars and there are astronauts, and that's just delusion. So let me just be straightforward about that. And it's okay to be delusional, like at some age, I guess. But I have not seen any credible evidence to support what he said and what he says. And it's sad, but that's where I stop my answer. Yeah, so yeah, it's not serious. Don't take it seriously. Yeah.
Awesome. How about Jordan?
Eliad, how realistic do you think a human travel to Mars will be? Is my first question. Do you think Away, the Netflix docuseries, was that accurate, or was that more a dream state than reality? And then my third is, where does the kind of private sector, Virgin Galactic, government, how do they intersect with that travel? And if you were to take a trip, where would you go?
Gotcha. So those are 4 now.
Yeah, there's 4.
Yeah, so let's start with the first one, whether travel to Mars is realistic. I think technologically, there is no limitation. It's not a technological limitation anymore. Like we are able to bring a spacecraft to Mars, land it, and everything would be okay, right? We are able to even support life, human form, right, on Mars. There are other questions you need to ask yourself. What is the cost associated with it, right? What's the politics of it? And when I say politics of it, I don't mean like national, I also mean within NASA. NASA politics is probably one of the most important things within the agency that people don't know about outside of the agency. So do you ask me if I think it would happen, or you ask me if you think it could happen? Could happen, definitely. Would happen, it's a real possibility. I was actually a part of a report that was sent to the White House committee from NASA to try to estimate that. And the real answer there was, you need to put more money if you want this to happen. So that's with respect to that. Whether I think that movies or series are good at describing the reality, probably not. But they're good at giving motivation. And I think that's the reason they're interesting. Your third question was what? Can you remind me? Where would I go?
Yeah, where would your trip be?
Okay. Oh, wow, that's a good one. Yeah, I would go with Mars. Like if I am actually like go through the program, I don't want to do lunar habitat. Like I want to do Mars first. Maybe one day, we'll see. I'll let you know in a few weeks when I know. You're laughing, but I'm serious. So that's with respect to that. And your fourth question was?
Well, I guess it's the human, not the human, the sort of the Virgin Galactic kind of tourist.
Oh yeah. So Axiom is one of the leading ones today, right? If you actually want to be an astronaut and you want to be launched to space and you have extra $50 million, those are the people you go to. I can tell you that I've been in contact with them for some time now, not about myself, other programs that are happening. And I think they're going to take a bigger and bigger place, especially as the ISS is going to be decommissioned at some point, right? At some point, the US is going to stop the support because it's going to move towards the lunar gateway. So at that point, I think commercial bodies would play a bigger role in moving astronauts, or they're not astronauts, they would be space travelers, right? Or however you want to call them. But astronauts are only people who went through the astronaut training program. That's the reason you cannot call yourself a cosmonaut or some other thing, because you have to go through the program. Yeah, so that's with respect to that.
Hey, Eliad, we want that list of the prospective inquiries. These sounds like a good donor list.
Yeah.
So, for Technion.
Yeah, I'll give you some. Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions for Eliad?
I mean, I have questions. I'm interested in you guys, right? So can you tell me, like, why are you here? Why are you like taking your time and want to hear about the Technion? Like, what's driving you? I'm just trying to understand your take, right? Because I'm interested in supporting the Technion and telling my story, but I'm really interested in learning about, like, why are you interested and what are the activities that you are dealing with or involved in to further your ambitions?
Okay, I'm happy to start it off, and then I'm sure
Sure.
other people have great answers too. Well, for me, the Technion University was always this idea for me when I was growing up. My grandparents were, incredibly involved. They would bring me to Technion events as a kid. I would see on the stage or, on a presentation just like this one, some of the amazing things that Technion alums would speak about. I got to see the rewalk, which was, people who were, paralyzed being able to walk again and look people in the eye and things like that. And then I went on Birthright with my sister a few years ago and actually was able to see the campus. And for me, being able to see the campus and being taken around to the different labs, to the different classrooms, meeting different professors, like that was, that was the big convincer for me. So that's my answer, and I'm sure other people, I'm sure Rod has an even better answer than me. But that's for me. Anyone else? Go ahead, Rod.
Sure, as long as you single me out. So one of the reasons is Greg and Jordan and others, just to see them stay involved, but in this organization, it's really a source of pride. We, some of us were fortunate enough to give in time or donating to the Technion in different departments. It's sort of this positive feedback circle. And then we see cool guys like Eliad who are working in Nassau and scratching our heads. He started out in a field with olives. I have a formative experience working in mangoes in the Arava, and there's just this great connection. And and I'm curious, Eliad, how many other Israeli scientists like yourself are working at Nassau now?
None.
None.
That's correct.
So I'm more proud of the Technion than ever.
Jordan, do you have any thoughts?
I think it's very tangible, your story, your personal story and your current experience. And I think for us as innovators, we want to share that with as many people as we can locally here in New York and across the United States between the other innovators programs. It's a big connector. It's highly interesting, and it's like our name. It's the innovation, it's the research, it's the science. From the beginnings of your story to where you are today, and we are, our mission is to support that. And by speaking with people and like yourself, it really brings it more to life.
But why is that your mission? I guess I could try to go to the core.
Well, I think it's important that we continue to support that in any way we can. Versus, there are a lot of different missions and different groups across the country and in New York. But this particular support of Technion is different. That's the differentiator. It's the focus on science, innovation, and it's a broad band. I mean, this is the second series we had in the Innovators. You're the second speaker, and our first two speakers were AI,
Mm-hmm.
and from AI to the large questions about what is it like to travel to space and what's out there. I mean, these are very interesting and deep topics, and that's, I think, what differentiates us and our connectiveness between the other groups.
Gotcha.
Artificial
Artificial intelligence is what I was looking for.
Eliad, we could be supporting, and I say this, I could support Stanford or Caltech or Harvard. First of all, they wouldn't know who we were. And we are able to really feel like we're connected to the various departments we may be interested in at the Technion, and then follow some of the academic researchers and follow their careers. That's a source of pride again. So it's a much deeper connection. I went to Stanford as an undergraduate. They don't, and lots of us went to other types of schools. They don't really, there's not the same connection. So why not support Technion, which has the same DNA, if you will. So
Gotcha.
I was going to ask you a question. If since we're only up, most of us are in New York, only a couple hours by train, when do we get a chance to visit you down in the capital area and see some of the cool labs down at DC?
Oh, so, okay. First of all, yes, we can arrange that, and I'm serious. So I'll be happy to do that. But we need to wait for COVID to go away. So whenever that happens, I promise to arrange it. Pamela, what do you think? Like, why are you doing this?
Sure. Well, I actually very proudly work for American Technion Society. So while I am physically in New York right now, I actually oversee our efforts in Southern California.
Gotcha.
And I'm actually hoping that we can have a program with you, with our community there, and our next gen group and our community. But, I think it's a similar sentiment that everyone here is talking about. I mean, I'm lucky enough to work on behalf of the Technion, but I am also proudly a supporter of the Technion. And it's just really amazing listening to our alumni and seeing where they are today, watching our students and the journeys that they have, listening to professors, and just seeing all of the innovation and research that not only impacts Israel, but really the world. And I really love seeing the innovators here. Next Gen is always something I care a lot about. And so I felt,
Gotcha.
to be able to join in here. But I guess, I come
Good.
from a little bit different of a perspective, but
You're good.
the same.
So another, I guess, question I have for everyone is, it seems like many of the people that you bring to the talks are the kind of people that you can foster connection with after this like 45 minutes talk, where we didn't actually get to sit together or have a beer or just find ways to communicate in more meaningful ways, right? So, and even more, I guess, important than that is like, we can also bring value to the conversation, meaning if you're interested in space technology, like I'm the person you can pick up the phone and call to and just ask something. If you're like in the middle of an investment or AI, that would be the person before me or someone else. So is there a way in which this forum could like make those connections to last beyond a presentation? Like we're all the same age, right? It's kind of all about the same age. It almost makes sense to keep this somehow.
I completely agree. And I think, pre-COVID, being able to get together in person and being able to, sit in a conference room and have those side conversations, the before the meeting and the after the meeting. And, that's really where the magic happens, so to speak. So, I have great optimism that that's what this will look like moving forward. I think to your point for now, everyone should feel like the lines of communication are open to send each other emails, to send each other, a text message or a phone call. Hey, I really thought this was interesting. I'm shy, but I really wanted to ask you this, or, whatever that looks like. So that's certainly what our plan is. And we'd love to have you become a big part of it. I think, a lot of people, especially in our age range, can identify with your journey and your relationship with the Technion. We'd love for you to be one of our, spokespeople and get more involved.
Sure. So I guess this talks to kind of Hillary and Neela. Like, feel free to shoot my email to anyone who is interested. Like, I would love to, if you have a question or something comes up, or I can help with something, right? That's how meaningful connections between, I guess, Technion graduates and alumni, between you guys. Yeah. So I would love to do that.
Yeah, we'll absolutely circulate your email to everyone on the call. And we
I
appreciate that a lot.
And I promise I'll arrange a visit. Just give me some time for this thing to go away.
Amazing. Well, I'll ask you one last question, and then I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. if you spoke to a young man or woman who had similar career aspirations and goals as you once did, and looked at the NASA workforce and said, oh, there's only one Israeli, what would you say to them? What would your advice be? And if they were thinking about the Technion, what would your advice be there? And basically, how would you sell the Technion is my question.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So I identify two questions there. One of them is, how can you get to the same line of business if that's your interest? Let's put it that way. And the second one is, why is the Technion a good choice, or a good place to get your education from if that's what you're pursuing? So as it comes to NASA, the first thing to say is, or let's take a step back. Space sciences is not done only at NASA, right? We have collaborators in different universities all across the US, all across the planet, different companies that we contract. So there is always a path. I hire probably every year around 20 people. And then on top of that, you can put contractors. So there is always an opportunity at hand if someone is interested. So finding those paths is only a matter of, are you in the right place, in the right, you have the right skill mix set, and whether you have the connection. So those are things that we can deal with, right? So my answer for that would be, I'm just trying to be very concrete. Like I'll be in a place where I can offer internships, I can offer postdoc position, graduate positions, actual full-time jobs. So it depends on the person that I talk to. But with respect to the Technion, I think the biggest gift I got from the Technion is the ability to learn everything on the fly just by myself. A lot of people complain that like the Technion is a hard place, or it's a really hard place to study A, B, or C, and it's true. Rigor-wise, I can tell you that I've been in the best universities in the US, like I crossed most of them. Technion by far surpass academically most of them. They might not be ranked #1, but I can tell you that I visited like nearly any meaningful aeronautical division faculty in the US. And I just put them on top of the line. But what's really good at the Technion is that, I don't know if it's good or bad, you can judge it, but because there is no personal connection between the professors and the students, you're judged solely based on your performance. So nobody like knows your name. There is an ID number on your test, for example. When you're accepted to the Technion, there is no letter that describes, here are my interests, or there is no essay. You have your ID number and you have the scores of your math, physics, whatever you're applying under. So that ability for the Technion to put you in a place where you have no excuses and you have to learn and you have to study and you'll be judged solely based on your performance, looks hard doing the degree, up to the place like we almost say like, oh, it's a not hospitable place, but it's not true. The truth is they're preparing you to real life. And that's what I love the most about the Technion, looking back. Like at the moment, I hated it. Let me just be honest with you. But looking back, I think it was the smartest decision I ever made. And it's hard to kind of go out of your bubble and see that, right? When you're in the moment. So, yep, I hope that answered your question.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Eliad. This was a great 1-hour session with you. There will definitely be a lot of follow-up, whether it's reaching out to you for questions or, that eventual visit to Washington, D.C. whenever COVID ends. But just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the Innovators and ATS for joining us. And I know Neela and Hillary will send out the recording of this for anyone who wasn't able to make it, who you think would be interested. That's how we really grow this thing. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and have a great evening.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Neela, Hillary, do you want me to stay for a minute or?
Sure.
Sure, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg and Jordan.